The stars looked different today. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the empty space ahead through the main screen. Something felt wrong, but he could not put his finger on it. The patrol route around New Haven. Colony had been quiet for months. Too quiet, maybe. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Lisa Grant from her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. "It looks like a large group of ships moving toward our sector." Morrison walked over to her station and looked at the display. The screen showed dozens of red dots moving in formation, then hundreds, then more than the computer could count properly. His heart began to beat faster. "How many ships are we talking about, Grant?" Lisa's face went pale as she ran the scan again. "Sir, the computer is having trouble with the exact number. Best guess is over 1,000 vessels. Maybe 1,200 or more." The bridge went silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at the captain. Morrison had served in the Earth Navy for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. No one had. "Commander Bell, report to the bridge immediately," Morrison said into his communicator. His second-in-command would need to see this. Ryan Bell arrived within minutes, still fixing his uniform jacket. He was a good officer, maybe a bit too careful sometimes, but reliable when things got tough. He took one look at the sensor display and whistled low. "That's not possible," Bell said. "No single fleet is that large. The computer must be making an error." "Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array," Morrison ordered. "I want to be absolutely sure about what we're seeing." Chief Engineer Corinne Murphy's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures on the edge of our sensor range." "Whatevers." "Out there, it's big, and it's moving fast." Morrison felt a cold weight in his stomach. New Haven Colony had 40 million people living on the planet below. Men, women, children who had never hurt anyone. They had farms and schools and small towns where everyone knew each other. If a fleet this size was heading their way, it could only mean one thing. "Grant, send an emergency message to Earth Command. Tell them we have a situation that needs immediate attention." "Already done, sir." But even at light speed, it will take 6 hours for the message to reach Earth. Any response will take another 6 hours to get back to us. Double quotes, 12 hours. Morrison looked at the display again. At their current speed, the enemy fleet would reach New Haven in less than 8 hours. Earth's reinforcements would not arrive in time, even if they left immediately. "Sir, I'm getting better resolution on the fleet composition," Grant reported. "I can identify at least 17 different ship designs. This looks like an alliance. Fleet, not just one species." Bell moved closer to the screen. "I recognize some of these signatures. Corvani heavy cruisers, Theron battleships, Zephyrian escort vessels. This is the biggest military force anyone has ever assembled." Morrison nodded grimly. The galaxy had been tense for months. Various alien empires had been forming alliances, testing human defenses, probing for weaknesses. Earth's intelligence services had warned that something big was coming, but no one expected this. "What are our orders for this situation?" Bell asked. "Standard protocol says we should gather intelligence and report back to command," Morrison replied. "We're supposed to avoid engagement with superior forces." "Superior forces," Murphy said over the communicator with a bitter laugh. "Captain, they outnumber us about 1,200 to 1. I'd say that qualifies." Morrison walked to the center of the bridge and looked around at his crew. These were good people. Lisa Grant had joined the Navy to see the galaxy and ended up becoming one of the best navigation officers in the fleet. Ryan Bell had a wife and 2 kids back on Earth who wrote him letters every week. Corinne Murphy could fix anything that broke and had saved their lives more times than anyone could count. The USS Defiant was not the biggest ship in the Earth Navy, but it was solid and reliable. It carried enough firepower to handle pirates or small enemy patrols. Against a 1,000-ship armada, it would last about 30 seconds in a direct fight. "Sir, we could retreat to the jump point and wait for reinforcements," Bell suggested. "Fall back to Earth space and let the big ships handle this." Morrison considered the option. It made sense from a military standpoint. Save the ship and crew to fight another day. But that would mean abandoning New Haven to whatever the aliens had planned. "Grant, open a channel to New Haven Colony Command Center." The screen flickered and showed the face of Governor Patricia Hayes, a middle-aged woman who had spent 20 years building the colony from nothing into a thriving world. "Captain Morrison, thank goodness. We've been monitoring deep space communications and picked up some concerning chatter. Is there a problem?" Morrison chose his words carefully. "Governor, I need you to begin immediate evacuation procedures for all civilian populations. Move everyone to the underground shelters and prepare for possible hostile action." Hayes' face went white. "How much time do we have?" "Less than 8 hours. Maybe 7. Dear God, Captain, we have 40 million people down here. The shelters can hold maybe half that number, and it will take days to evacuate everyone off-planet." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his decision was made. "Do what you can, Governor. Move as many people as possible to the deepest shelters. We'll buy you as much time as we can." After ending the communication, Morrison turned to his crew. "You all heard that. We have 7 hours before the biggest alien fleet in history reaches New Haven. Earth's reinforcements won't arrive in time. So what do we do, Captain?" Grant asked. Morrison looked at the sensor display one more time. 1,200 ships against one. The smart thing would be to run. The safe thing would be to retreat and save themselves. But 40 million innocent people were counting on them. "We're going to do our job," Morrison said quietly. "We're going to protect New Haven Colony." Bell stared at him. "Sir, with respect, that's suicide. We can't fight a fleet that size." "I'm not planning to fight them, Commander. I'm planning to stop them." "How?" Morrison walked to his captain's chair and sat down. He felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. In the next few hours, he would either save 40 million lives or get his crew killed trying. Maybe both. "Murphy, I need everything the engines can give us. Push the power systems beyond normal limits if you have to." "Aye, Captain." "What are we doing exactly?" "We're going to place ourselves directly in the path of that armada and see what happens." The bridge fell silent again. Morrison could feel his crew's eyes on him, wondering if their captain had lost his mind. Maybe he had, but sometimes crazy was the only option left. "Grant, plot an intercept course. Put us right in front of their lead ships." "Sir, are you sure about this?" Morrison nodded. "Set course for intercept. Full speed." The USS Defiant turned toward the approaching enemy fleet, one small ship heading toward 1,200 larger ones. In the vast emptiness of space, it looked like complete madness. But Jake Morrison had a plan. The USS Defiant moved through space like a tiny dart, heading toward a massive wall of metal and death. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of the bridge, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on the screen with each passing minute. His crew worked quietly at their stations, but he could feel their fear. "Distance to enemy fleet?" Morrison asked. 2 million kilometers and closing," Lieutenant Lisa Grant replied. Her voice was steady, but Morrison noticed her hands shaking slightly as she worked the controls. "At current speed, we'll reach weapons range in 43 minutes. Commander Ryan Bell moved to Morrison's side and spoke in a low voice. "Captain, I have to ask again. Are you planning to actually fight them? Because if we are, I should prepare the crew for battle. Morrison shook his head. We're not going to fight them, Commander. At least not the way they expect us to. Then what exactly are we doing? Morrison had spent the last hour thinking about everything he knew about the Corvani Empire and their allies. The Corvani were the leaders of this massive fleet. They were proud, organized, and very careful about military planning. They did not like surprises. They especially did not like things they could not understand. Tell me what you know about Corvani military thinking, Morrison said to Bell. Bell thought for a moment. They're very traditional. They like to follow established battle plans. They study their enemies carefully before engaging. They prefer overwhelming force to minimize their own losses. Exactly. They've probably spent months planning this attack. They know how many ships Earth has in this sector. They know our typical response times. They've calculated everything down to the smallest detail. So? Morrison smiled grimly. So we're going to do something they haven't calculated. Something that doesn't fit their battle plans. The bridge communication system crackled to life. Chief Engineer Karen Murphy's voice came through from the engine room. Captain, I've got the power systems running at 120% of normal capacity. The energy output should be visible on their sensors now. Good work, Murphy. Can you push it higher? I can get maybe another 10%, but we'll be running some serious risks. If something goes wrong, we could lose main power completely. Do it, Morrison turned to Grant. Lieutenant, I want you to start running attack patterns. Make it look like we're preparing for a full assault on their lead ships. Grant stared at him. Sir, you want me to target their fleet? All of it? Not. Just target it. I want you to lock weapons on as many ships as possible. Make it look like we have a plan to take them all on. Bell grabbed Morrison's arm. Captain, that's insane. When they see us preparing to attack, they'll open fire immediately. We'll be destroyed before we can even explain what we're doing. Morrison pulled his arm free gently. Commander, trust me on this. The Corvani don't shoot first and ask questions later. They're too careful for that. When they see one human ship preparing to fight their entire fleet, they're going to stop and think about why we would do something so crazy. The next 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. The USS Defiant continued its approach toward the massive alien armada. On the screen, individual ships became visible. Huge Corvani dreadnoughts that could crush the Defiant with a single shot. Sleek Theran battlecruisers bristling with weapons. Strange-looking Zephyrian vessels that seemed to bend light around them. Enemy fleet is slowing down, Grant reported. They've reduced speed by 30%. Morrison felt his first moment of hope. They're confused. They don't understand what we're doing. Captain, I'm reading multiple targeting locks from enemy ships, Bell said. At least 50 vessels have weapons trained on us. But they're not firing, Morrison pointed out. They're waiting to see what we do next. Murphy's voice came through the communicator again. Captain, I've got the power systems running hot. From the outside, we probably look like we're charging up some kind of super weapon. Perfect. Grant, start broadcasting on all frequencies. I want every ship in that fleet to hear this message. Grant's fingers flew over her controls. All channels open, sir. Morrison took a deep breath and began to speak. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy vessel USS Defiant. You are approaching human space with hostile intent. You will stop your advance immediately and withdraw from this system. The bridge fell silent. Morrison could almost hear his crew thinking the same thing he was thinking. One ship against 1,200. It sounded completely insane when he said it out loud. No response from the enemy fleet, Grant reported, but they've stopped their forward movement completely. Morrison nodded. Open the channel again. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Morrison again. I know you can hear me. I also know you're wondering why one human ship would position itself in front of your entire fleet. You're probably thinking we're either crazy or we have something you don't know about. Bell whispered, "What are you doing?" Morrison held up a hand for silence and continued speaking. The answer is both. We are crazy, and we do have something you don't know about. We have something that your intelligence reports probably didn't mention. We have the one thing that makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy. He paused for effect, letting the silence stretch across space. We don't know when to quit. Morrison ended the transmission and turned to his crew. Now we wait and see what they do. Captain, what if they just decide to shoot us? Bell asked. Then we'll have bought New Haven a few extra minutes, Morrison replied. But I don't think they will. They're too curious now. Grant was monitoring the enemy communications. Sir, I'm picking up a lot of chatter between their ships. They're definitely talking about us. Can you translate any of it? Some of it. The Corvani commanders are asking their fleet captains for advice. The Theran ships want to attack immediately. The Zephyrians are. Well, it's hard to translate, but they seem to think we're some kind of bad omen. Morrison smiled. The Zephyrians were a superstitious species. They believed in signs and portents. Having one small ship face down their entire fleet would definitely seem like a bad sign to them. Murphy, can you create some kind of energy discharge? Something visible, but not actually dangerous. I can overload one of the secondary power relays. It'll create a pretty light show and won't damage anything important. Do it. A few seconds later, bright blue energy crackled along the hull of the USS Defiant. The discharge was visible for thousands of kilometers, lighting up the darkness of space like a lightning storm. Energy discharge detected by enemy sensors, Grant reported. They're all scanning us now. Morrison could imagine the confusion on the alien ships. Their sensors would show the small human vessel generating impossible amounts of energy. They would be wondering what kind of weapon could create such a display. Sir, the enemy fleet has stopped completely, Bell announced. They're maintaining position at weapons range, but not advancing. Good. Grant, open communications with the lead Corvani ship. I'm getting a response, sir. They're opening a channel. The screen flickered and showed the bridge of a massive alien. Warship, a tall reptilian creature in military uniform, stared at Morrison with large, dark eyes. This was Admiral Zektar, commander of the Corvani fleet. Morrison had seen his picture in intelligence reports. Human captain, the alien said in accented but clear English. I am Admiral Zektar of the Corvani Imperial Fleet. You are either very brave or very foolish to challenge my armada with a single ship. Morrison looked directly into the camera. Admiral, I prefer to think of it as very human. Zektar's head tilted to one side, a gesture that Morrison knew indicated confusion in Corvani body language. Explain yourself, human. Why do you block our path with one small vessel? Morrison had been preparing for this moment since the confrontation began. Everything depended on what he said next and how he said it. Admiral, has anyone ever told you about human military history? Admiral Zektar stared at Captain Morrison through the communication screen. The Corvani commander's reptilian features showed confusion and growing concern. Behind him, Morrison could see other alien officers moving nervously around their bridge. Human. Military history? Zektar repeated slowly. What does your ancient past have to do with this situation? Morrison leaned back in his captain's chair, trying to look as calm and confident as possible. Inside, his heart was racing, but he could not let the alien admiral see any fear. Admiral, your intelligence reports probably told you about human weapons and ship designs. They probably told you about our fleet sizes and defensive positions. But I doubt they told you about the way humans think about war. Sektar's dark eyes narrowed. Explain. 3,000 years ago on Earth, there was a place called Thermopylae, a narrow mountain pass where a small group of human warriors faced an army of over 100,000 enemies. Morrison paused, watching the alien's reaction. Lieutenant. Lisa Grant was monitoring communications from the enemy fleet, and she gave him a small nod. The other ships were listening to this conversation. The human warriors knew they could not win, Morrison continued. They knew they would all die, but they also knew that their sacrifice would inspire others to fight harder. So they stayed, they fought, and they died. But their sacrifice helped save their entire civilization. This is ancient history, Hagtar said, but Morrison could hear uncertainty in his voice. Is it? Admiral, let me tell you about something that happened just 50 years ago. A human cargo ship called the Mercy Star was attacked by pirates near the edge of our space. The ship had no weapons and no chance of escape. Do you know what the captain did? Sektar did not answer, but Morrison could see he was listening carefully. The captain rammed his ship into the pirate flagship, destroying both vessels. He killed himself and his entire crew to stop the pirates from attacking other innocent ships. That's how humans think, Admiral. We don't just calculate odds and make logical decisions. We do what we think is right, even when it means certain death. Commander Ryan Bell was watching Morrison with amazement. The captain was making it all sound completely believable, even though Bell knew they were running the biggest bluff in military history. Morrison stood up and walked closer to the screen. You want to know why I'm here with one ship against your entire fleet? Because that's what humans do. We stand up to bullies, no matter how big they are. You are trying to intimidate me with stories, Sektar said, but his voice lacked conviction. I? Tell me, Admiral, what do your sensors show about my ship's power output? There was a long pause. Morrison could see Sektar consulting with his officers in the background. Your vessel is generating more energy than should be possible for a ship of its size, the alien finally admitted. Morrison smiled. That's because we've made some improvements since your last intelligence update. Earth's military has been very busy developing new technologies, things that might surprise you. This was the crucial moment. Morrison had to plant doubt in the alien commander's mind without actually lying about specific weapons or capabilities. The line between psychological warfare and outright deception was very thin. What kind of improvements? Sektar asked. The kind that turn small ships into very big problems, Morrison replied. Admiral, let me ask you something. How many ships can you afford to lose today? What do you mean? I mean that even if you destroy my ship, which you certainly can, what happens next? How many of your vessels will survive whatever comes after that? Chief Engineer Karen Murphy's voice came through Morrison's earpiece, too quiet for the aliens to hear. Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup in their weapon systems. I think they're getting ready to fire. Morrison kept his expression calm, but he spoke a little louder. You know, Admiral, I should probably mention something. Earth Command has been experimenting with new defensive strategies. We've learned that sometimes the best way to protect something is to make sure that attacking it costs more than it's worth. What are you talking about? Morrison walked to Lieutenant Grant's station and pretended to check some readings. What he was really doing was buying time while he figured out how to make his next lie sound convincing. New Haven colony has been completely evacuated, Morrison said. Every civilian has been moved to secure underground facilities. But more than that, the entire planet has been prepared as what we call a denial zone. Sektar leaned forward. Denial zone? If your fleet attacks New Haven, You won't find a thriving colony to conquer. You'll find a dead world that's been rigged to explode with enough force to destroy everything within 1,000,000 kilometers, including your fleet. This was a complete lie, but Morrison said it with such confidence that even his own crew started to believe it might be true. You would destroy an entire planet to stop us? Zektar asked. Admiral, we destroyed our own cities rather than let enemies capture them. We've burned our own farmland rather than let invaders feed their armies. Destroying one planet to save 100 others? That's just good strategy. Grant was monitoring the alien fleet communications, and Morrison could see her becoming more excited as she listened. She scribbled a quick note and handed it to him. They're arguing with each other. Some captains want to withdraw. Morrison read the note and smiled. The bluff was working, but he needed to push harder. Of course, the planet's destruction is just the beginning, Morrison continued. Earth's response fleet should arrive in about 6 hours. When they get here and find New Haven destroyed, along with whatever's left of your armada, well, let's just say they won't be in a negotiating mood. You expect me to believe that Earth would sacrifice one of its colonies just to destroy my fleet? Morrison looked directly into the camera with the most serious expression he could manage. Admiral, let me tell you something about humans that your intelligence reports definitely didn't mention. We hold grudges. If you destroy New Haven, Earth will hunt down every ship in your fleet, every officer who participated in this attack, and every world that supported this invasion. We will not stop until every single one of you pays for what you did here. The alien commander was clearly shaken. Morrison could see him talking urgently with his officers. Though the sound was muted, Morrison continued his psychological assault. But here's the thing, Admiral. Right now, you have a choice. You can turn your fleet around and go home. No one gets hurt. No one has to die. Or you can attack and face the consequences. What do you think your Emperor will say when you return home with half your fleet destroyed and nothing to show for it? Zektara's image flickered as the communication signal wavered. When it stabilized, the alien looked directly at Morrison. Human. Captain, you are asking me to believe that you would sacrifice your own life and your crew just to delay our attack by a few minutes. Morrison nodded. That's exactly what I'm asking you to believe, because it's exactly what we're prepared to do. The communication channel went silent. Morrison could see Zektar talking animatedly with his officers, but no sound came through. Finally, the alien admiral returned his attention to the screen. Captain Morrison, I am going to consult with my fleet commanders. Do not move your ship during this time. Take all the time you need, Admiral. But remember, every minute you wait is another minute for Earth's reinforcements to get closer. The screen went black as Zektar ended the communication. Morrison turned to face his crew, all of whom were staring at him with expressions of amazement and terror. Sir, Bell said quietly, what if they decide to call our bluff? Morrison sat down in his captain's chair and closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, he looked tired but determined. Then we find out if humans really are as crazy as I just told them we are. The USS Defiant hung in space like a tiny island in an ocean of metal death. Captain Jake Morrison paced the bridge while his crew worked quietly at their stations. Admiral Zektar had been conferring with his fleet commanders for almost an hour, and the tension was becoming unbearable. Any change in their formation? Morrison asked. Lieutenant Lisa Grant shook her head. No, sir. They're holding position, but I'm reading a lot of movement between ships. Small shuttles going back and forth between the command vessels. They're having meetings, Commander Ryan Bell observed. Physical meetings, not just communications. That means they don't trust their own communication systems, or they're discussing something they don't want intercepted. Morrison nodded. Both possibilities were good news. Either the aliens were being paranoid, which meant his psychological warfare was working, or they were planning something secret, which meant they were taking him seriously. Chief Engineer Karen Murphy's voice came through the intercom from the engine room. Captain, I've been monitoring their energy signatures. 3 ships on the left flank have powered down their weapon systems. Morrison felt a flicker of hope. Powered down completely? Not completely, but they've reduced power significantly. Either they're having technical problems, or their crews are getting nervous about this whole situation. Keep monitoring all their systems, Murphy. Any change could be important. Grant suddenly looked up from her station with excitement. Sir, I'm picking up communications between the alien ships. They're not even trying to encrypt them anymore. Can you translate? Some of it. The Theran commanders are arguing with the Corvani officers. The Therans want to attack immediately. They're saying that waiting makes them look weak. Morrison smiled grimly. The Therans were a warrior species that valued honor and direct action above careful planning. They would hate being held up by one small human ship. What about the other species? Grant listened to her earpiece for a moment. The Zephyrians are, well, this is interesting. They're talking about omens and signs. Apparently, some of their shamans are saying that attacking us would bring terrible luck to the entire fleet. Bell laughed despite the tension. Superstitious. Aliens. That's something we can work with. Morrison walked to the communications console. Grant, can you open a channel to just the Zephyrian ships? I think so, sir. Their communication frequencies are different from the others. Do it. Grant worked at her controls for several minutes. Channel open to Zephyrian vessels only. Morrison cleared his throat and began to speak in a slow, mysterious voice. This is Captain Morrison of the human vessel. I speak now to the wise Zephyrians who understand the deeper meanings of what happens in the darkness between stars. He paused, letting his words sink in. Morrison had studied Zephyrian culture during his academy training. They believed that certain events were messages from their gods. You have traveled far from your sacred worlds to fight in a war that is not your own. But the universe has placed one small ship in your path. Ask yourselves why. Ask your shamans what it means when the weak stand against the strong without fear. Morrison ended the transmission and turned to Bell. Now open a channel to just the Theran ships. Theran frequency locked in, sir. Morrison changed his tone completely, making his voice harder and more challenging. Theran warriors, you follow the path of honor and strength. But where is the honor in 1,000 ships destroying one? Where is the strength in overwhelming numbers against a single opponent? He let anger creep into his voice. Your ancestors would be ashamed. They fought worthy enemies in fair combat. You hide behind numbers like cowards. Bell stared at Morrison with amazement. Sir, you're trying to make them angry. Exactly. Angry people make mistakes. And the Therans value personal honor more than military objectives. If I can convince them that this attack is dishonorable, some of them might withdraw. Grant was monitoring the responses to both messages. Sir, the Zephyrian ships are definitely affected. I'm reading 3 vessels moving away from the main formation. And the Therans, well, they're very upset. But I think some of them are actually agreeing with you. Morrison felt the situation shifting in his favor, but he knew he had to be careful. Push too hard, and the aliens might attack just to end the psychological pressure. Murphy's voice came through the intercom again. Captain, I'm reading some kind of malfunction in our power systems. The overload I created earlier is starting to cause real problems. Can you fix it? I can try, but it might cause the energy output to spike even higher. From the outside, it'll look like we're charging an even more powerful weapon. Morrison grinned. Murphy, you're a genius. Let it spike. A few minutes later, the USS Defiant began to glow with an even brighter blue energy field. The light was visible across the entire enemy fleet. and Morrison could imagine the panic on their sensor stations. Grant looked up from her controls with excitement. "Sir, I'm detecting 6 more ships breaking formation. They're moving away from the main fleet." "Which species?" "2 Zephyrian, 3 Corvani, and 1 Theran vessel." "Captain, I think the fleet is starting to fall apart." Morrison knew this was the critical moment. He had to push the psychological pressure to its maximum without triggering a desperate attack from the remaining ships. "Open a channel to Admiral Zektar." The screen flickered and showed the Corvani commander's bridge again. Zektar looked tired and frustrated. Behind him, Morrison could see heated arguments between officers of different species. "Admiral," Morrison said calmly, "I can see you're having some difficulty maintaining fleet discipline." Zektar's eyes flashed with anger. "Human captain, you will not lecture me about military command." "I'm not lecturing, Admiral. I'm just observing. It must be difficult to hold together an alliance of so many different species, especially when they start questioning the wisdom of this attack." Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "Tell me, what are your orders from the Corvani Emperor? I assume he expects you to return with most of your fleet intact." "My orders are not your concern." "Aren't they?" "Because from where I sit, it looks like you're about to lose a significant portion of your armada, and you haven't even reached the real fight yet." Morrison gestured toward the screen, showing the fleet formation. "How many ships have already withdrawn? 10? 15? How many more will leave when they realize that Earth's response fleet is only a few hours away?" Zektar was clearly struggling to maintain his composure. "You are bluffing about the response fleet. Our intelligence shows that Earth's nearest major vessels are days away from this sector." Morrison smiled coldly. "Admiral, our intelligence shows that your intelligence is out of date. Earth has been moving ships for weeks, preparing for exactly this kind of attack. Did you really think we wouldn't notice the largest fleet in Galactic history assembling near our space?" This was another lie, but Morrison delivered it with complete confidence. The truth was that Earth's fleet was scattered across dozens of systems, and it would take days to assemble a force large enough to challenge the alien armada. "Even if reinforcements are coming," Zektar said, "we still have more than enough ships to complete our mission and deal with any Earth vessels that arrive. Do you? Let's see, ... You started with 1,200 ships. You've lost at least 15 to desertion. When my ship explodes, it'll take another 50 or 60 of yours. With it, Earth's response fleet will account for maybe 300 more. That leaves you with what, 800 ships? And that's before the real fighting even begins." Morrison stood up and walked closer to the screen. "Admiral, let me ask you a simple question. Is conquering one human colony worth losing half your fleet?" Zektar did not answer immediately. Morrison could see him calculating, weighing the costs and benefits of continuing the attack. "You have one more chance to make the smart choice," Morrison continued. "Turn your fleet around now, while you still have most of it intact. Go home and tell your emperor that the humans were more prepared than expected. That's not a defeat. That's good intelligence gathering." The alien admiral's image flickered as communications became unstable. When the picture cleared, Zektar looked directly at Morrison. "Captain, you have impressed me with your courage. But courage alone will not save you or your colony." Morrison felt his heart sink. It sounded like Zektar was preparing to order the attack after all. But then the alien commander continued speaking. "However, you have also raised questions about the cost of this operation. I am going to give you 1 hour to withdraw your ship. After that, we will proceed with our mission." The screen went black as the communication ended. Morrison turned to his crew, who were all looking at him with a mixture of hope and fear. "1 hour," Bell said quietly. "What do we do now?" Morrison sat down in his captain's chair and stared at the massive enemy fleet. He had gained some time, but he had not won yet. The real test was still coming. Captain Jake Morrison stood alone in his quarters, staring out the small window at the massive alien fleet that filled the darkness of space. The hour that Admiral Ziktar had given him was almost over. In 10 minutes, the largest armada in Galactic history would either attack or retreat, and Morrison still did not know which way it would go. He walked back to the bridge, where his crew waited in tense silence. Lieutenant Lisa Grant looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. "Commander." Ryan Bell paced nervously near the weapons console. Chief Engineer Karen Murphy had come up from the engine room to be with the rest of the crew during what might be their final moments. "Any change in their formation?" Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer from the expressions on their faces. "No, sir," Grant replied. "They're still holding position. But I'm detecting increased energy signatures from their weapon systems. They're preparing for something." Morrison nodded and sat down in his captain's chair. He had done everything he could think of to avoid this moment, but it seemed like the bluff was finally going to be called. "Captain," Bell said quietly, "maybe we should consider Admiral Ziktar's offer. We could withdraw and live to fight another day." Morrison looked at his second-in-command with understanding. Bell was a good officer, and a good man who was thinking about the lives of the crew. But Morrison was thinking about the 40 million people on New Haven who were counting on them. "Commander, if we withdraw now, what message does that send?" "It tells every hostile species in the galaxy that humans will back down when faced with overwhelming odds. How many more colonies will be attacked because we showed weakness here?" Murphy spoke up from her position near the engineering station. "Captain, the power systems are running at maximum. I can't push them any higher without risking a complete shutdown." "That's all right, Murphy. You've done everything I asked and more." Morrison stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. He looked at each member of his crew, these brave people who had followed him into an impossible situation without question. "I want all of you to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my career. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, remember that we stood up for what was right." Before anyone could respond, Grant's console began beeping urgently. "Sir, I'm getting a communication request from the alien fleet. Put it on screen." Admiral Ziktar's reptilian face appeared on the main display. Behind him, Morrison could see the alien bridge crew preparing for battle. The Corvani commander looked tired but determined. "Captain Morrison, your hour is over. I am ordering you one final time to withdraw your vessel." Morrison straightened his uniform and looked directly into the camera. "Admiral, I'm afraid I can't." "Do that? Then you have chosen death." "Maybe. But before your fleet opens fire, I want to tell you one more story about humans." Ziktar's eyes narrowed. "I have heard enough of your stories. This one is different. It's about the Battle of Thermopylae that I mentioned before. You see, Admiral, I didn't tell you how that story really ended." Morrison began to pace slowly. In front of the screen, his voice taking on a storytelling rhythm that his crew had never heard before. Those 300 Spartan warriors did die at Thermopylae, every single one of them. But their sacrifice inspired all of Greece to unite against the invasion. The massive Persian army that seemed unstoppable was eventually defeated completely. He stopped pacing and looked directly at Ziktar. "The lesson isn't that small forces can defeat large ones through courage alone. The lesson is that sometimes the greatest victory comes from inspiring others to fight harder than they ever thought possible." Ziktar was listening carefully, and Morrison could see uncertainty in the alien's dark eyes. "What are you saying, human?" Morrison smiled grimly. "I'm saying that when your fleet destroys the USS Defiant, and when the news of this battle reaches Earth, every human in the galaxy will know that one ship stood against 1,200 and refuse to surrender. Do you have any idea what that will do to human morale? He leaned closer to the camera. You think humans are dangerous now? Wait until you see how we fight when we're really angry. Morrison paused for a moment, then continued with quiet intensity. Every human ship captain will remember this moment. Every human soldier will think about the crew of the Defiant when they face impossible odds. You won't just be fighting our military admiral. You'll be fighting our legend. The alien commander was clearly troubled by Morrison's words, but he tried to maintain his resolve. Stories and legends do not stop plasma cannons, Captain, don't they? Let me tell you what's going to happen next, Admiral. Your fleet is going to destroy my ship. Some of your vessels will be damaged in the process, because we're not going down without a fight. Then you'll attack New Haven and find it empty except for automated defenses and some very nasty surprises. Morrison's voice grew harder. And then Earth's response fleet will arrive. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when they see what happened here, when they see that you destroyed one lonely ship that was just trying to protect innocent people, they won't be interested in negotiation or surrender. He stepped closer to the screen. They'll hunt down every ship in your fleet, Admiral. They'll track down every officer who participated in this attack. They'll follow you to the edge of the galaxy, if necessary, because that's what humans do. When you hurt the people we're sworn to protect. Zektar was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was uncertain. You cannot know that Earth will respond as you describe. Can't I? Admiral, let me ask you something. If your whole world was threatened, if your people were in danger, how far would you go to protect them? I would do whatever was necessary. Exactly. And humans are no different, except for one thing. We're better at it than anyone else. Morrison turned away from the screen and walked to Grant's station. Lieutenant, begin evacuation procedures. All hands to escape pods. Sir? Grant looked confused. That's an order. Everyone off the ship except essential bridge crew. Bell stepped forward. Captain, if you're staying, then so are we. Morrison looked at his crew with pride and sadness. This isn't your fight anymore, Commander. I got us into this situation, and I'll see it through. With respect, sir, Murphy said. We all volunteered for this mission. We knew the risks. Morrison was about to argue when Grant suddenly shouted from her station. Captain, I'm reading. Massive power fluctuations in the enemy fleet. Multiple ships are powering down their weapons. Morrison spun around to face the screen. Admiral Zektar was talking urgently with his officers, and Morrison could see panic spreading across the alien bridge. Admiral, what's happening with your fleet? Zektar looked back at the camera with a mixture of anger and defeat. 17 more ships have withdrawn from the formation. The Zephyrian contingent is refusing to participate in the attack. 3 Theran captains have declared the mission dishonoring and are returning to their home systems. Morrison felt his heart begin to race. The psychological warfare was working even better than he had hoped. And what about you, Admiral? Are you still planning to attack one human colony with whatever ships you have left? Zektar was quiet for several long seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with frustration and something that might have been respect. Captain Morrison, you have cost me nearly 200 ships without firing a single shot. You have turned my own allies against me with nothing but words and stubbornness. The alien commander paused and continued. I am beginning to understand why the galaxy fears humans. It is not your weapons or your ships that make you dangerous. It is your absolute refusal to accept defeat. Morrison waited, hardly daring to breathe. The Corvani fleet is withdrawing, Zektar finally said. This attack is over. The bridge of the USS Defiant erupted in cheers as the crew celebrated their impossible victory. Morrison slumped into his captain's chair, feeling the weight of the last few hours finally hitting him. On the screen, Admiral Zektar gave him one final look. "Captain, I hope we never meet again in battle." Morrison smiled tiredly. "Admiral, I hope we never have to." The communication ended, and Morrison watched as the massive alien fleet slowly turned away from New Haven. One by one, the ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the USS Defiant alone among the stars. Grant looked up from her station with amazement. "Sir, they're really leaving. All of them." Morrison nodded, still hardly believing it himself. They had faced down 1,200 ships with nothing but courage and clever words. And somehow they had won. Bell walked over to Morrison's chair. "Captain, how did you know it would work?" Morrison looked out at the empty space where the alien Armada had been just minutes before. "I didn't know, Commander. I just bet everything on the one thing that makes humans special." "Which is?" Morrison smiled. "We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten."